structured my talk based on these following areas. That is, why regulation in the first place is important. Then the key factors for quality assurance of radiopharmaceuticals. When you talk about the quality assurance, we go to good manufacturing practices. Then following that, we have the regulatory aspects in the Indian scenario. I will talk about the Indian scenario first. Then the regulatory aspects which are prevailing in the worldwide scenario. And then the current trends and challenges in radiopharmaceutical regulation, which will be my concluding slide. Now coming to why regulation is important. First of all, we have to understand that the product is being injected into a patient, so the end user is a patient, and definitely patient safety is of paramount importance. So we have to ensure the product quality and the efficacy, and we have to, at the same time, because it's a radio labeled product, we have to control the radiation exposure risks, these can all be done if you standardize the production and handling of the radiopharmaceutical. It supports compliance with legal framework. It has to support the compliance part of it also, and it has to facilitate global harmonization. It has to be at par with global harmonization of radiopharmaceutical use. Now, what are the key factors for quality assurance of radiopharmaceuticals? It starts from the raw material which are used for making the radiopharmaceutical, then validated production processes, quality testing, sterility and apyrogenicity assurance, radiochemical and radionuclide purity, and qualified personnel training, proper documentation and batch records. Now I want to tell you that these are the key factors even for quality assurance of normal pharmaceuticals, but radiopharmaceuticals being special formulations, they have the radioactivity part of it, and so radionuclide purity and radiochemical purity also is a part of the quality assurance system. Now when you talk about quality assurance, all these quality assurance factors can be taken into consideration when you are following good manufacturing practices, that is GMP. Now I would first like to emphasize that quality you just cannot test at the end. It has to be integrated into the system. It has to be starting from the starting materials, it has to be integrated into the system, and it has to be taken to the end of the system. That is, it has to be designed and built into the system, be it the starting material, the facility, the SOP, the personnel training, and so on and so forth. I will go into the details of GMP. So the key factors for GMP are the quality management system, the premises, the equipment qualification and calibration, quality control of starting materials, reagents, etc., sampling, quality control of finished radiopharmaceutical products, validation of analytical methods, then documentation, personnel and training, environmental monitoring, radiation safety measures, waste management, validated sterilization methods, and regular audits and compliance checks. Now all these points can be elaborated individually, and it can be a part of another presentation. I will not be able to elaborate on all these, but for instance take into account documentation. Documentation is very, very important. It enhances the visibility of a quality assurance system, means it gives you the history of each and every batch which is made in a production facility, including the discrepancies, the traceabilities, etc. And therefore documentation forms a very important part which is looked into by regulators or auditors when they visit a facility. They get a better picture of the whole process, and they can assess the whole quality assurance system of the facility by looking into the documentation. So all these aspects are very important for maintaining GMP of a facility. Now coming to the regulatory aspects, the Indian scenario, here I would like to give a small background, following which I would like to say how this whole regulatory system was put into action in India and the current status of the regulatory system in India. As Usha also mentioned in her presentation, we started the radiopharmaceutical development program, the R&D program on nuclear medicine quite early. We were an early entrant. In 1956, the Apsara reactor was commissioned, and it gave the potential application of radioisotopes in healthcare. Was known much earlier to that, in the 1950s, and at that point of time, these preparations were called special medical preparations. The term radiopharmaceutical was coined in 1960. With the commissioning of the Apsara reactor, small-scale production of some radioisotopes started in the AEET, that is the Atomic Energy Establishment Trombay, which was the previous name of BRC. Then some of the medical radioisotopes which were produced in the Apsara reactor at that time was iodine-131, phosphorus 32, and gold-198. Now, following this, in 1960, the Cyrus reactor was commissioned, and there was significant enhancement in the radioisotope production. Additional isotopes, like most of them were, of course, industrial isotopes: sodium-24, chromium-51, cobalt-60. Cobalt-60 again is a medical isotope, so I'm not going to the details of the isotopes which were produced in the Cyrus reactor at that time. But there was a landmark event at that time. It was our visionary Dr. Homi Bhabha who realized that these medical radioisotopes, which are being produced in the Cyrus reactor and previously in the Apsara reactor, could be used for human healthcare application. And it is because of his vision that the Radiation Medicine Center was born in 1963, because this was a center where medical radioisotopes were being administered to human patients for human healthcare application. Now, the moment the medical application of radioisotopes was in sight, a monetary body became a necessity. So that was the turning point in the whole regulatory system. Means some regulation was required because it was being used finally into human patients. So now coming to the drug regulation in India, this is the regulatory infrastructure followed in India. That is, it is all under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, which appoints members from the CDSCO, that is Central Drug Standards Control Organization. The Drug Controller General of India, DCGI, is the head of this CDSCO, and all these things are governed by, the regulations are governed by the Drug and Cosmetics Act of 1940 and the rules thereof in 1945. The approval of drugs and conduct of clinical trials, laying down the standards for drugs, control over the quality of imported drugs in the country, etc., are all governed by the Drug and Cosmetics Act of 1940. Coming to the details, now Chapter 3 of the Drug and Cosmetics Act of 1940 deals with imports. Now, import is a totally different thing when you consider radiopharmaceuticals or even for that matter other drugs. Radiopharmaceuticals are covered under the definition of drug via Section 3B of the Drug and Cosmetics Act of 1940 in India. In India, import, manufacturing, sale and distribution of the drug is regulated by the Drug and Cosmetics Act. The bulk drug, that means that the active pharmaceutical ingredient, that is the bulk drug formulation, the finished formulations, any substance which is falling under the definition of a drug has to be registered before import in India, for under the Drug and Cosmetics Act. That the manufacturing sites have to be registered, and if the drug falls within the definition for new drug, then the new drug approval is a prerequisite for submission of application for registration or import. That means you have to go through two stages. First, the new drug application has to be approved, and then you have to register the drug even for the import of the new drug into the country. Now, the application for the registration of import can be made to the licensing authority under the Act, that is to the Drug Controller General, or by the local authorized agent of the foreign manufacturer having either manufacturing or sales license by the foreign manufacturer or having a wholesale license for the country. So there are different authorities who can be approached for getting the import license for registration. Now, when we consider radiopharmaceuticals and the Drug and Cosmetics Act, I would like to emphasize that the Chapter 4 deals with, of the Drug and Cosmetics Act, deal with manufacture, sale and distribution of drugs and cosmetics. The central government of India in the TSR 926, dated 1977, exempted radiopharmaceuticals from all provisions of Chapter 4 of the Drug and Cosmetics Act and rules thereunder. That is, it is under the Schedule K. So, radiopharmaceuticals come under the Schedule K and they enjoyed the exemption category. That is based on the fact that the unique nature of radiopharmaceuticals is that they have a short shelf life, and unlike the conventional radiopharmaceuticals, therefore they were not included in the Schedule K of the Drug and Cosmetics Act. And more than that, at that time the prevailing situation was that radiopharmaceutical production and supply, it was remained confined to only government agencies, that is to the Bhabha Atomic Research Center. They were the pioneers, and they were having the monopoly in this business of drug manufacture, radiopharmaceutical manufacture and distribution. So that was under the Department of Atomic Energy, and this was the reason why the exemption was given to the radiopharmaceuticals under category Schedule K of the DNC Act. Now, so at that point of time, the regulations of radiopharmaceutical system of internal controls and self-regulation was instituted by BRC in the form of the Radiopharmaceutical Committee. The import of radiopharmaceuticals still remained to be covered by the DNC Act, and they had to be registered before import, and only the Radiopharmaceutical Committee was responsible for giving approvals for use, marketing, and approvals for radiopharmaceuticals for marketing and use in the country. Now, the genesis of the present Radiopharmaceutical Committee in 1968, it was made. It was an advisory cum overseeing body on production aspects of radiopharmaceuticals. In 1968, the Nuclear Medicine Committee was made. That was an overseeing body for clinical use of radiopharmaceuticals. So, RPC did not have any power to do give approval for the clinical use of the radiopharmaceuticals. So, the NMC was made, and then the expansion of the RPC to the present form was made in 1978. With academic experts or experts of pharmacology, representatives of DCGI, representatives from FDA Maharashtra also. The products, these are some examples of products requiring RPC clearance. Usha has nicely covered it in her talk. So there are several radioisotopes, there are ready-to-use diagnostic radiopharmaceuticals, ready-to-use therapeutic radiopharmaceuticals, ready-to-use oral formulations, cold kits, radiochemical generators, products involving preformed precursors like hydroxyapatite or glass microspheres, etc., and products which are for local applications like skin patches, hydroxyapatite, etc. Now, India's new drug, see, with the growth of this field, on radiopharmaceuticals, it was felt pertinent that a new draft bill was to be proposed. The new draft bill of 2022, it made several changes. However, the exemption category of radiopharmaceuticals was still continued under the draft bill of 2022. The current scenario is that there was another Gazette notification dated 28/12/2023 where there is some kind of ambiguity, that is under the Schedule K or Schedule M. Radiopharmaceuticals were included. That means they have to be prepared under GMP conditions, and they were subject to checks by external auditors. However, there is another clause there which says that radiopharmaceuticals still continue to be under Schedule K, where the exemption category was given earlier. So this ambiguity is not yet solved, and to solve this discrepancy or this ambiguity, DAE had approached DCGI to give a clarification, and the clarification is yet to be obtained. Now, to give the radiopharmaceuticals legal status, from 2010 onwards, these radiopharmaceuticals were started, the radiopharmaceutical production monographs were included in the Indian Pharmacopoeia. Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission constituted an expert committee who was responsible for including all these production monographs in the Indian Pharmacopoeia, and so far it all started in 2014 when 19 radiopharmaceutical monographs were included, and this continued, and to the best of my knowledge, till 2019, almost 37 RP monographs are available in the Indian pharmacopoeia. The role of Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, this is an obvious question. Role of this AERB clearance is mandatory for preparation of the radiopharmaceutical preparations and for handling the radioactivity. They have no role to play with respect to the pharmaceutical use of the product, radiopharmaceutical, the use of the product in patients. And it has to be, but however, AERB permission or approval has to be obtained by hospitals who are participating in clinical trials or using radioactivity to prepare radiopharmaceuticals and allied products in any form. So an obvious question may be that apart from RPC, that is which is an institute, which is a committee which gives approval for products manufactured in government institutions under the Department of Atomic Energy, what is the approval mechanism followed in other hospitals? That is the Institutional Medical Board, that is Institutional Medical Ethics Committee or the Internal Review Board, which takes approval in case-to-case basis. Now, marketing authorization again for Board of Radiation and Isotope Technology, they can get a marketing authorization for RPC approved products, whereas for private users, they require an NOC from AERB for import of the radioactive formulations and a QC analysis report from DAE in certain cases for the import of the generators. Coming to the global regulatory landscape on radiopharmaceuticals, as you know that they face a dual regulation because as medicinal products as well as radioactive materials. The drug regulators like FDA, EMA, that is European Medical Agency, etc., they oversee the quality, safety and efficacy, and the nuclear radiation authorities is license the production, handling and transport. Coming to specifics, the international guidelines and guidance and the regional approaches, WHO and IAEA recommend the GMP, QC and safety frameworks for global harmonization. In fact, the most recent development is that WHO and IAEA, they have made a committee, global committee for harmonizing radiopharmaceutical regulations all over the world. And coming to the European Union, EMA guidance plus national regulation, emphasis on CGRP for in-house preparation, whereas for US, the FDA regulates the investigation on new drugs, new drug applications, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commissions is the regulatory body which gives approval for handling radiation, gives the radiation licensing possibilities, and these are the international guidelines which are followed in the US and the European Union. Now, the current trends and challenges in the radiopharmaceutical regulation, as you know, that the global expansion of radiopharmaceuticals is driven by theranostics. In fact, this conference is on theranostics. So, it demands adaptive modern regulatory frameworks because there are not a lot of new isotopes which are coming in, there are a lot of new techniques which are coming in. To cater to that, it requires a expansion and at the same time adaptive regulatory framework. Then the WHO, IAEA harmonization initiatives which have been started. There are several publications on this also. Some technical review CDs are there which serves as a guideline for global reference. The regulatory variability persists worldwide. As you can understand that regulatory framework is not adequate or up to the mark or not uniform in all countries. There are some small scale hospital radiopharmacies and countries with inadequate regulatory infrastructure. For them, WHO, IAEA references and manuals serve as a global reference. Now, it is important to strengthen the capacity building and harmonize standards is essential to ensure safe and equitable global access. And future regulatory efforts will need to balance rapid innovation, that is, to cater to the demands of new theranostic products, the new isotopes, etc., with at the same time ensure patient safety, supply reliability, and global equity. So this is the conclusion of my talk, and I'll be open for any questions. Thank you very much.